What's going on, everyone? Thanks for checking out this Fallout 76 video. This one is pretty much going to be a summary over my nuking experiment series. As some of you may know, I just recently hit my 50th episode for that series, so I decided now it's time to make some top 5s, compiling things that you all might find useful in one video. For this one, I'm going to be going over the best spots to nuke overall in Fallout 76. By overall, I'm talking about it has a good balance between a lot of enemies, a lot of flux, and a lot of the nuked ingredients that you get off the enemies. Oh, and also experience. But that kind of goes with the nuked ingredients and enemies. So anyways, to get this started, for the first one that I'm going to be going over, which by the way, these are in no specific order. The first one I'm going to be telling you all about is Morgantown though. When you do target over here, be sure to also be hitting Morgantown Airport because you'll be able to do a pretty good event while in a nuke zone. There will be waves and waves of enemies that'll come after you within the collision course event that spawns up here. And this event will pop up multiple times before the nuke zone actually disappears. So yeah, definitely keep in mind to also be targeting Morgantown Airport as well. As you can see, I did manage to get a 3-star legendary scorched enemy at the end of all the waves here at the collision course. So yeah, just throwing it out there, this gives you a bunch of extra XP, which means more nuked ingredients and possibly even more legendaries to exchange for script or keep. It's pretty much just based upon what you get as a drop and what you want to keep or not. And as for Morgantown itself, it is infested everywhere with glowing ones. Like, you get tons of nuked ingredients and tons of enemies to face. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't really seen that many legendaries around in the city, but I will mention this is a great spot to get a ton of experience and the nuked ingredients. Morgantown easily made it in this top 5 list. I don't know if any of y'all have ever targeted this location or any of the others that I'm going to be mentioning, but definitely try to give this one a shot. It's well worth it. You get loads of experience because once again, Morgantown is infested with glowing ones. Well, typically they're infested with just regular feral ghouls, but when you nuke over here, it's infested with glowing ones. And keep in mind, the collision course isn't the only event that you'll be able to repeat up here in the nuke zone. You'll also be able to repeat Feed the People, and this will reward you with canned meat stew, which this will give you 5% bonus experience for an hour after eating it. It's pretty useful, especially when you go over here in the nuke zone. It's good to take this because you're just going to get even more experience from all of these ghouls that spawn over here. There's also a Back on the Beat event that'll spawn sometimes too. And all of these events will help spawn in more glowing ones for you to get a better experience out of your nuke zone. And by the way, thought I would mention this, the flux that you get up here around in Morgantown are mainly cobalt and fluorescent. As you can see, I got 61 cobalt and 30 raw fluorescent flux. And keep in mind, this was about 20 minutes of looking around this vicinity. You could of course get way more than what I'm previewing here. I'm just showing y'all what is most common around in this area. Yeah, you still get some yellow cake and violet flux, but not nearly as much as you get fluorescent and cobalt flux. Which, by the way, real quick, in case you don't know what flux is used for, let's just say, to keep it simple, flux is mainly for in-game players. For one, you're going to have to stabilize your flux to craft specific things in the game. And how you do that is by going up to a chemistry station and going down to nuked flora, and as you can see, it's going to require 10 of the raw specific flux to stabilize it. So yeah, if you get 100 of, say, raw cobalt flux, you'll be able to make 10 stabilized cobalt flux, which stabilized is used to craft a bunch of different things in the game, such as the decontamination shower. This requires a lot of flux to craft in your base. This takes away your radiation, by the way, and is gotten by taking out the in-game boss, the Scorch Beast Queen. Also, you can craft ultracite ammo, which this ammunition can boost your damage. However, you're going to need a prime receiver on your weapon to be able to use this ammo, which, speaking of, the prime receivers require flux to craft. Also, there's tons of power armor modifications that require flux as well, such as, for example, the jetpack and the calibrated shocks that you can add to your power armor. A lot of the modifications require flux. So yeah, as you can see, the flux is used to make quite a bit. I didn't even go over every single thing. Keep that in mind. The next one up was actually going to be Charleston. In case you don't know, the Capitol building used to be an amazing spot to target because of all of the enemies that were inside this place. Wow. I don't know if you guys got to experience this, but it was easily just as much as the golf club over at White Springs. The only difference is, since this was inside a building, these don't technically have the nuked ingredients that you need to mix with the flux. But if you're looking for experience, this was definitely the spot to go. It was more under the radar, but it was just as good as White Springs. Just as good. Just because you could keep respawning the enemies inside this Capitol building. But yeah, nowadays, since there was an update that was implemented, changing around the Capitol building, as you can see here, they are no longer glowing ones inside here, period. You get an actual mixture. The nuke does not affect inside the Capitol building, nor the other buildings around this area too. So this was just chopped off the list. I was going to add this just in case some of you might be saying, why didn't you add Charleston in this? Well, it's because that area was patched involving nuking. So I decided to go with Fort Defiance. This place is an extremely great spot to be targeting with a nuke. And the reason why is because there's tons of glowing ones inside the building. There's also tons of enemies that spawn here when you activate the line in the sand event. And I mean tons, like it literally feels like an endless amount. And all of these enemies contain nuked ingredients. There's a lot of players that are missing out on this spot. This is another one of those under the radar spots, except this one hasn't been nerfed in any kind of way. So far, I should say. Not only do you get a lot of Scorched Conquerors running after you when it's active, but you also get a lot of Scorched Beasts too, which those will help you gain even more experience. Hey, I mean, don't knock it until you try it. I'm telling you, this is another area that's definitely worth it. Everything that I'm covering in this video is supposed to be helping you all save time on your decisions. Trust me, I have nuked enough areas to know by now. And keep in mind, you can do this event multiple times before the nuke zone actually disappears. And I don't know if you all have ever done Line in the Sand event, but it is not short. It's pretty long. It's one of the longest events that you can do in the game. And within this event, there's just waves and waves and waves and waves of Scorch that attack this area. And we just have to defend. It's literally that simple. And getting a lot of players over here joining in on this event makes it extremely easy. You just got to be trying to target as many enemies as you can because you want that experience, and you should also want that nuked ingredients that you can get. And you get plenty of yellow cake flux around in this vicinity. You also get quite a bit of cobalt, and you get some crimson. There's not much fluorescent and violet around in this area. Once again, I highly recommend this area. This is Fort Defiance. This area is just as good as White Springs because you have that constant event that will continue to pop up here over time. The downfall about targeting over here is that it doesn't seem that there's as many legendaries as there would be, say, targeting White Springs. However, there are loads and loads and loads of enemies here, which means lots of experience and lots of nuked ingredients that we need to craft with, such as like glowing mass and hardened mass. This is definitely a spot to target if you are looking for experience gain. Same with Morgantown. Also, by the way, for the flux over here, it seems like you get a lot of yellow cake, crimson, and cobalt. You don't get so much fluorescent and violet though, I will mention. But yeah, those three, crimson, cobalt, and yellow cake, are stacked with it over here. Be sure definitely to check the graveyard next to the Fort Defiance. That has quite a lot inside there to get you started. So if you're looking for level ups, consider trying Fort Defiance out and keep continuing to start up that Line in the Sand event. You can start that mission up quite a bit of times before the nuke disappears. Actually give it a go and you'll see what I'm saying. You get loads of experience. Next up, for one of the best spots to target with the nuke, is over here at Harpers Ferry. First off, let's just go ahead and get into the flux of this area. This place is loaded with raw violet flux, crimson flux, fluorescent flux, and some cobalt flux. You hardly get any yellow cake around in this area. As you can see, here's the nuke floor that I managed to gather within like 20 to 30 minutes of searching. Of course, you can find way more than what I'm previewing here. It is absolutely infested with all of those over here. So yeah, keep that in mind. That's the flux over here. And as for the enemies that will be over here, you have a random spawn choice of super mutants, scorched, or feral ghouls. And as we know, feral ghouls become glowing ghouls. And super mutants give you the most experience between scorched and glowing ones. Now keep in mind, there is typically legendaries all around in this area. Like, this is a great area to farm legendaries at. But anyways, not only is Harpers Ferry a great area for legendaries to spawn at, but also over at a nearby location too that the nuke zone should be in. over here at this substation, there is a chance of a legendary enemy spawning. Also, especially not to mention, going down below Harpers Ferry. Down here is the burrows, and this place will be infested with glowing ones. Like, as you can see here, just tons and tons of glowing ones. And I had one time actually, when I came down here, just tons of legendaries spawn. As you can see with this footage, I got just loads and loads of legendaries. But yeah, this isn't always the case. But typically you do find a legendary or two when coming down here as well. Not to mention, you get loads of experience too. This place is just as good as White Springs, if not better. Just really depends on what kind of flux you're looking for. There's just as many enemies here, just as much flux here, and just as many legendaries here than there are at White Springs. Just a lot of people don't know that for sure. There's so many people just obsessed and comfortable with just nuking the White Springs over and over again. Well, let me tell you all something. There's other locations out there that are just as worth it, and hopefully this video will help prove that. I think people have just gotten too comfortable nuking White Springs when there are other locations out there that are just as good. Anyways, that's actually what I'm going to be getting into next. The most known good location, White Springs. And yeah, this area is fantastic to target. It has tons of enemies, tons of flora, and a lot of the enemies can be legendary. So yeah, overall, of course, this place is definitely worth it. But I feel like a lot of players that do target this area are not really experiencing other areas as much. They've just gotten too comfortable with White Springs, which is understandable, but it's great to mix it up every now and then. I highly suggest the other locations that I have shown in this video. Please, let's spice it up, everyone. But yeah, the reason why White Springs is so good, like I mentioned, tons of enemies, tons of legendaries, and tons of flux. I mean, if you go to the White Springs Golf Club here, whew, you'll see why players continue to target this area. My goodness, there is just tons and tons of glowing ones that'll come out of the club. And sometimes there can be a couple legendaries within the mass swarm that comes after you. You just gotta go in there, take a couple of shots, and they'll just come swarming out of the building. It's insane. And also, not to mention, around the area as well, you'll find plenty of other glowing ones to take on. People just pretty much do a lap around White Springs a couple times to get the most out of it. And as for the flux over here, what you get the most of is fluorescent and yellow cake. Also, you can get some crimson and cobalt, but hardly any violet. It's lacking majorly of that. Honestly, it's lacking in cobalt and crimson too. That is comparing to the fluorescent and yellow cake that you get over here. It's mainly that. But yeah, that's White Springs in a nutshell. And for the last and final location that I wanted to go over within this top 5 is targeting, a lot of you probably guessed this, the Fissure Site Prime, which spawns in the Scorch Beast Queen, which this is an in-game boss fight that you get from specifically nuking the Fissure Site Prime, which I think is an awesome chain reaction within the game. Like, I feel like that is great in-game content. To be utilizing our in-game content, which is nuking areas around in Fallout 76, and some areas that we target could trigger these in-game boss fights elsewhere. So far, it's just the Scorch Beast Queen. And obviously I had to add this into the video because that was the main reason why I started the Nuking Experiment series. I wanted to find something else that would be chain reacted from nuking that specific area. Like it triggered something. For instance, when you nuke over here at the Fissure Site Prime, that triggers the Scorched Earth event, which is an in-game boss fight that you get to take on. It'd be cool if there were other in-game events around in other areas that we had to specifically target with a nuke somewhere. Who knows? I mean, they might be, and we just haven't found them quite yet in the game. If it's not, hopefully Bethesda does add some more interesting areas that we can target for something special to trigger. Because I feel like they're onto a good idea, utilizing the in-game content to trigger more in-game content. I just said in-game content a lot right there. But yeah, in case you haven't done the Scorched Earth event, it is timed, and you have to take out the Scorch Beast Queen within the certain amount of time that you have. The Scorch Beast Queen fight is a very, very tough fight. And the more players that are here, the tougher the Scorch Beast Queen is. So if you're like level 20 or something coming over here, let's just say you're probably annoying a lot of players. I'm speaking for a lot of players I know that get annoyed over low levels coming to this fight. I'm not saying you can't do it, but let's just say you're just making the fight harder and you're not really doing much while you're over there. But if you're like 40 or 50, that should be good enough to do a decent amount of damage to the Scorch Beast Queen, where you're not completely useless being over there. But if you manage to beat the Scorched Earth event, you get the Decontamination Shower for your camp, which this is used to remove rads. This requires flux to build. I showed this previously in the video. Also, you get improved repair kits, which these are very, very handy to have on you. You also get stabilized flux, and keep in mind each stabilized flux requires 10 raw flux to make. Also, you get a legendary as well. So yeah, you get quite a bit from just completing the Scorched Earth event. Also, if you go to loot the Scorch Beast Queen, you get another legendary there too, as well as some ultracite plans. This is actually how you get the prime receiver plans for your weapons that will require ultracite ammo. So yeah, that is some great info to know right there. Also, for the flux around in this general area, you'll find mainly raw violet flux. Just be looking underneath these trees around in the vicinity. Also, you will find some crimson too. But mainly it's infested with raw violet around here. But yeah, there you have it everyone, the top 5 best locations overall to be targeting with a nuke in Fallout 76. Hopefully now, after I make this and it gets out there more to the public, more players will be comfortable nuking other areas besides the White Springs Resort and the Scorch Beast Queen. Maybe the other 3 that I mentioned in this video, you might see more players targeting now, which would be kind of a cool chain reaction for Fallout 76 players. We'd get to experience more of a variety besides the same old over and over. I'm out of here though, everybody. Thanks for taking the time watching and listening. If you found this enjoyable, consider leaving a like, and hey, maybe stick around and subscribe if you want. As always, that's totally up to you. Until next time, peace.